Welcome, everybody. So nice to see so many familiar faces, but also a lot of new faces. Today, we are going to talk about the rising flame of community engagement. I hope this will spark some thoughts. It will give some inspiration, and hopefully, by the end of the talk and afterwards, some reflections. What are communities? How do they differ from networks? Why is that relevant for us in the cybersecurity field? This is what I'm going to talk about to you today and debunk a little bit about the conceptions and definitions of community network and how we can benefit from being in those setups. I'm Bianca. I work in Volvo Group as the head of cybersecurity risk management. I've been doing cybersecurity risk management for the past 8 years in mostly the financial sector industry. And I worked with different offensive security teams, leading purple teaming, red teaming, wargaming exercises, as well as tabletops for executives. Before moving to Volvo, I ventured a little bit into the threat intelligence analyst position. That was fun. And I have been having the luck to work with communities from the very beginning of my career. And this is why I also chose to talk about this today. So it's a big joy to be able to see this community setup growing through the past few years in our field. And I think it's very beneficial for us to look at how they can bring a lot of empowerment. So today we are going to look at what is community, why is it important, and we are going to take two different study cases, the Nordic Financial CERT and the Women for Cyber. And there are many exceptional communities in our field, too many to mention, actually, but these two are the ones that I know about more in depth and I worked with very closely with, and this is why I chose the two examples. There are many exquisite examples that we can find out there, so it's not the only things we should look at. But because I have experience with these, I thought it would be nice to walk through them in depth. And if you stay with me until the final note, you will get some tips, as well as a little surprise at the end. So we will look at communities both through an enterprise point of view with the Nordic Financial CERT case, as well as the more personal individual point of view with the Women for Cyber case. So the big question, what is community? There has been a lot of research, and it's been analyzed by many researchers, and it can be different for different research fields, but today we are going to look at it from a social point of view. So the definition of community looks a little bit like this if you look into it. Community is a group of people who are considered as a unit because they have shared interests, common experiences, and beliefs. So there is definition that might look familiar, but also you could think this could be a network too. So there is a lot of confusion between network and community because the two social models borrow language from one another. When we look at network, it's a loose, interconnected personal relationship that you get, and it allows different individuals to communicate with one another through this dynamic web of relationships. So quite similar, but also very different. So when we look at the differences, we see that in the community context, you actually need to engage, you need to contribute, you need to be active, you need to give something as a member to the community. In a network, it's more of a transactional relationship that you'll have and more passive. You consume, but not necessarily give something back. So there are underlying differences when we look at it. The reason it's important to see these two concepts together is because a lot of people, at least in my career path, have advised me to do a lot of network. But that has not always been something that I found meaningful, because I would interact with a lot of people, but not always we would have an in-depth conversation or could relate to each other. While in the community context, I could find myself more meaningful interactions, something that motivates me and inspires me more. So it's interesting to see this advice and the hype around networking, but also the fact that community as a concept has been growing quite a lot in the past few years because people are looking for more meaningful connections. So we could take also a network and make it and evolve it into a community, but it doesn't become a community unless there is this meaningful interaction, this common beliefs and behavior, and this engagement. And community nurtures the whole person on many different layers and levels. Looking closer into what makes community a community, it's been researched by many psychologists, and they found this sense of community kind of feeling that is the basis encompassing the members. And the reason for that is that they have a feeling of belonging, a feeling that they matter to each other, a shared faith that their needs will be met by committing to be together, by committing to a common goal, to a common purpose. There's a lot of theories among the sense of community, but the one proposed here by Macmillan and Chavez has been the most influential in the field and has shaped also the rest of the research that has been done on this. When we look at this sense of community, it has certain elements such as the feeling of belonging, the feeling that we matter to each other. But how does that really come together? How does that flow through the members? How does that come to be? When I reflected upon it, through my experience with NFCERT and Women for Cyber and a few other examples of communities, I came to the conclusion that it's about trust. So trust shapes human interactions. And in this case, trust is the foundation for this sense of community and the feelings that brings with it to be formed. So then I thought, that's very interesting. What is trust? How do we look at trust? Why is trust such an important element in this type of setup, this social structure? So I actually found out that we can look at trust from a social organizing principle. There are many theories about what trust is, depending on which field and perspective you look at. But from the social organizing principle, trust is the willingness to accept vulnerability based on the fact that you have positive expectation about the other person's intentions or behaviors. That's pretty powerful. It means you can be weak, show your weakness to the others, and expect that they will perceive that positively and help you, that they will actually not take advantage of that. So you rely on the other person's actions, on the other party's actions, and have that risk of opportunism, and you are willing to reveal sensitive information, either about yourself as an individual or about your company, the enterprise. but the risk of harm that you are taking is less than the one that you will have by not sharing. And the reason you have assessed it like that is because you have trust as a member of being in that community that your weakness that you will share will not be taken advantage of. So, all very interesting concepts, because we speak about community a lot here at Disobey, and I think nice to take some time and reflect about what does actually mean and how does it come together. So to wrap it up in the context of community towards network, how they interlock and also come apart, we see that this foundation of trust, as well as the shared beliefs and values, is much higher when you reach the community level than when you are in a network. So it's natural for people to look at the two concepts and think they are quite similar or the same most of the times. But if you think about it in these terms, you will see that there is a huge difference and also a huge leverage from the network side to become a community if they put more trust, if they put more shared beliefs and values. So, why is this important? Why is it relevant for us in the cybersecurity field? Well, because trust creates mutual benefits, and it actually brings a lot of empowerment. So here we will talk about the power of reciprocation that you have as a member being part of such a setup, such a community, the power of sparring, the power of belonging, and the power of reflection. So you get a lot of benefits and a lot of empowerment being in a community setup, but I thought I should drill it down to these 4. And each one of these is really important because it makes what community is. So the fact that you lift others up because you know you will be lifted up too when you have an issue, when you are in a crisis, when you have a personal or career dilemma. This is the power of reciprocation. In the community definition, the members know that their needs will be met, and the others will speed to their help when they need it. And because they have this foundation of trust, they can feel that their weakness that will be revealed in order to get this reciprocation will not be taken advantage of. The power of sparring. What's more important than a trusted partner? Somebody that you can talk to freely, that you can bounce ideas off and feel like you are empowered, feel like you are getting to the root of the problem, feeling that you are getting towards the solution, feeling that you are getting out of a mind block or a difficult situation. This trust basis works so well that it increases the openness in knowledge transfer and also speeds the circulation of knowledge. So it actually facilitates cooperation and joint problem solving. So in communities that exist in the cyber field, this is very important because when you are in a crisis situation or an incident situation from an enterprise point of view, that is a very important element. The fact that you can facilitate cooperation, can speed the circulation of information and knowledge, and have that joint problem solving. It's the same on the individual or personal level. Maybe the speed is not so important, but the fact that you are able to have a set of people that understand you. I don't know about you, but in my environment, most of my friends or family do not work in cyber or in the corporate environment. So it's very hard sometimes to get advice or relate, or them to relate to my problems or me to relate to their problems. So if I have a community set up in the cybersecurity field with the different communities that can empower me and I can have that sparring partner, it's really motivating and inspiring. The power of belonging. It comes a little bit to the example I brought now. The fact that you feel part of this community as a member, the fact that you are able to have this emotional safety and trust, and that you know you can go to that community when you need it. The power of reflection. It's good to have sparring, it's good to have reciprocation, especially when you are in the storm, when you are solving the incident, when you are having your career crisis or dilemma, what your next step will be. But also it's good to have time to take a step back. So after the storm has passed, you can engage with a set of members from the community and you can reflect on the lessons learned. More even than that, you can learn from the others. You can understand how they did it before, what you did differently, what you could have done better, and how would you do it next time. So this reflection is really good because great ideas usually are born by having this type of interactions. So for me, these are the 4 powers that you get by being in a community setup, both from an enterprise point of view and from an individual point of view. But let's dive a little bit more into the study cases. And sometimes we use study cases a lot to prove our arguments. But in this case, I would like us to see it as not proving anything, but more learning something. So by looking at these examples of communities, how can we take that back? How can we reflect upon that? And how can we take it further? So the Nordic Financial Cert. A lot of you in this room are quite familiar with NFCert, as we call it for short. For those that don't know it, it's a cross-border sectoral partnership. It was founded in 2017, and their motto is that they strengthen the Nordic financial industry's resilience towards cyber attacks. So it's a collaboration between banks and other financial institutions in order to combat the attacks they get, the cyber criminal groups that are after them. And they realize that despite them being competitive on a business level, they should not be competitive on a cyber defense level. So they realize that by putting their forces together, they can protect each other better. They can be stronger together while they would be weak alone. What is important about this setup is that it encompasses both quite large enterprises as well as small and medium enterprises. So there is a safety net created for those small and medium enterprises that don't necessarily have a lot of investments put in their cyber defense. They're not as big, so their departments that are in the cyber defense are also not as big. Their SOC teams are pretty small, so they don't get always all the insights or all the cool tools that they need in order to face the big threats. They believe that, the banks believe, and the financial institutions that are engaged in this setup believe that there is a mutual benefit, there is a mutual gain by sharing information about vulnerabilities and attack vectors. So being together helps them to counteract all of these harmful factors that are out there in the threat landscape. They provide threat intelligence and information sharing, specialist support for incident handling, coordination of incident response, and that includes public sector as well, law enforcement agencies, and other communities. So what are the benefits of being part of financial CERT, Nordic Financial CERT? Quite a few. The members get a strengthened resilience towards cyber attacks. It breaks the asymmetry of information. It ensures that they help each other because they have created this community sense, this trust basis, and therefore this collaborative culture. And it equips the members with knowledge, insights, different tools and expertise that they don't necessarily possess in their own enterprise. So it builds a lot of formal as well as informal relationships, both with the members that are the financial institutions, but also with institutions such as the police, national CERTs, the national banks, all across the Nordic countries. So they have members now both in Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. So it's quite spread, and it shows that being in it for so many years has proven that the financial sector as a critical infrastructure component has benefited from seeing themselves as non-competitive on this field. So the power of reciprocation comes by strengthening the resilience. When one member needs help, when one member needs an information or an analysis made, the others speed up to help them to do it. It breaks the asymmetry of information. They get a lot of threat intel. Of course, the bigger members have their own quite developed tools. But by sharing with each other, you can see more of the fullest picture. The fact that NFCERT is a member in other communities that are more global and don't necessarily reside only in the Nordics gives an insight about things that happen outside of our little realm in the Nordics. So if we observe something that happens, we tell NFCERT as a member, then NFCERT looks into the other members, tries to find out, has anybody seen this before? Is there something that we can leverage as information? And also ask the other communities outside of the Nordics what they have seen, how they went about it, and if they can help us. So the information you have is not only the one you are sitting with as a SOC or as a CERT team in your own enterprise, you actually get a sea full of information from all the other enterprises that are part of this community, and the fact that NFCERT as an association and as a formation is part of the more international setups. This is crucial in incident handling and in crisis management situations because maybe somebody has seen something else before you and they already sped to resolve it, so they can give you that tip you need in that moment. Or you might be the first one to see it, so then you can actually give a heads up to the others. And this comes with the collaborative culture and the trust. The fact that you have already built that relationship, the fact that you have already built that trust foundation gives you the enhancement to do that. And no matter how big of an enterprise you are, you can't spend all your money on all the cool stuff out there, on all the right tools. So if the other members have a tool that you're lacking, or if the other members have some insight and expertise that you're lacking, you can leverage that. So then you are able to have a more joint cybersecurity effort in such a situation and harmonize your efforts with the others in order to solve the problem you are facing. It also gives you this heads up, as we said, and the risks you have and the preparedness levels you should have become more visible suddenly, because you can see the other members, what they are struggling with, and you can understand, okay, is this something that I also should be aware of? Is this something that I also should be looking at? Let's look at the individual level. We talked about the enterprise and how they can benefit. Now we will talk about the more personal, individual facets of this. And we will conclude in the end with the tips as well as the other benefits. So the Women for Cyber Foundation is a European setup. It was founded in 2019, and the goal is to create a more diverse and a more equal and inclusive cybersecurity field by upskilling young women and girls and break the gender barriers, as well as the misconceptions that exist about our profession, make it more approachable. There are 25 chapters in Europe, and it's growing more and more. So I founded the chapter in Denmark, and that's why it's very close to my heart. It's a community that empowers women, but also is open to everybody. So despite our focus being on the women, everybody can learn from it. So through Women for Cyber, we ensure that members help each other because we are building this in a community sense with the foundation of trust, with the concept of lift others up so you can rise too. It breaks the asymmetry of gender representation because we hope that through this we will have more diverse teams, which will lead to more high-performing teams. And the roles and competencies also become quite different than what they were 10 years ago. So hopefully the asymmetry of gender representation that will be broken will also help fill different positions that are needed with different mindsets and different backgrounds. It explains misconceptions around the cybersecurity roles and the cyber domain. We have very nice communities in cyber, and we have very cool roles in cyber. But somebody that is not familiar with the field and sees us from the outside, if they look in the media, a lot of the time, they see headlines such as the heads of cyber or the CISOs don't sleep at night. The criminal groups are looming and coming after us. The incident response teams are constantly on call. Which is a misconception because, of course, those things exist, but we are not in a constant limbo. We are not in a constant crisis all the time. We don't live under a constant fear. So for somebody that doesn't know much about this field, it sounds a bit scary. It's like, do I really want to have such a job? Do I want to get myself into that? And they stop there. Because if they don't have somebody in their close environment to grab their hand and bring them into the cool stuff, drag them into a community event or setup, it doesn't go further than that. So I'm quite lucky because even though I don't have a technical background and I didn't have somebody in my environment to drag me into this kind of cool stuff, I got interested in cyber just by the different elective courses and the path I took in my studies. But well, when I look at the the students nowadays and I talk to them, which are not maybe studying something in a computer science related degree or a software engineering related degree, and even there, they don't always think about, hey, I could actually go into cyber. And Women for Cyber, in this case, as a community, represents this knowledge hub, gives these insights and tools and expertise in order to find the cyber domain interesting. It provides with role models so people can relate to them more easily. A lot of the role models that we have been interviewing, it's quite funny actually, a lot of them fall into cyber. So they might have had a very different career path before, but then one day they found themselves to work with something related to cyber and they got interested and hooked up on the idea and they continued from there and never looked back. So it's nice to see this type of role models because somebody that is a lawyer maybe and has a lot of background in privacy and information security doesn't think about it like from a cybersecurity point of view. They think about it, I'm a lawyer, but they could actually become a cybersecurity professional. So this community and knowledge hub can become leveraging for you to discover more about yourself, for you to discover more what potential you have. A good example of that is when I started Women for Cyber, I really was very lost, despite wanting or knowing what I'm supposed to do. And looking into my network, I was like, I have no idea who could help me with this. But I did have a trust foundation and a sense of good feeling that my colleague Nora would help me with that because she started the Women for Cyber in Finland. So we already had something in common. So I called her up and I said, I want to do this. We haven't never met each other, but I know you can help me with this. And she helped a lot, and that's why Women for Cyber Denmark is a reality. So I took that part of the network, put the trust bases into it, and lift it up into it becoming kind of a community feeling, that sense of belonging and reciprocation. And it rewarded me. So, the final note. I think for us as individuals, it's important to seek out our local communities and introduce ourselves, even if we don't have the time to engage actively or contribute for the very first step that we take into the community. Trust me, you will get motivated and inspired by the help you will get from the others, and you will want to give back. You will then be able to offer your help and be more active. You will start finding the energy and the power to reciprocate and help the others. And that will help you become even more part of the community, even more part of the organism. You will start participating and engaging in discussions, and you will start having this feeling of belonging and being able to share your thoughts in a psychological safe environment. So be brave and seek out those communities, engage with them, hear them out, see if you can relate. And if you cannot, then build one. If you have an idea, if you have something that you find interesting and it doesn't exist, Disobey helps a lot with that by giving you a start or other setups also. So you can always start somewhere. From an enterprise point of view, I think it's really important that enterprises, either they are big corporations but especially if they are small and medium companies, also both within the private as well as the public sector, they start seeing cybersecurity matters and security matters and defense matters in general, not as a competition, but as a way to protect the business. And they should come together and build such communities, start working on a more trust-based foundation in order to do something good for the societies, in order to give back to the protection of the societies, because we have seen that even some of the more small and medium-level enterprises that we haven't considered before as critical infrastructure can become critical in a national crisis. If they get hit by an attack and they don't know what to do, they have not built this community feeling, they only have a very loose network, which can also work based on personal relationships, but it's not always enough. And if you have such a systemic risk as a cyber risk, it's not enough to stand alone towards this kind of threats. It's not enough to stand alone when you have your health infrastructure threatened all the time, when you have this small and medium type of enterprises that cannot build up huge cyber defense centers. So, time for a mindset shift. Let's start small with strengthening the personal relationships you already have in your current networks and build more trust from there. It takes quite a lot of time to build that trust, and it doesn't start from scratch. Even the Nordic Financial CERT, where the banks and the financial institutions were already collaborating on an ad hoc level, it took them quite a few years to come together in this more formal partnership and this formal community. So start small within your already existing networks and try to build them up from there with the trust foundation to become a more community feeling, so that you get that psychological safety environment to share your weaknesses, to share your vulnerabilities as an enterprise or as a public sector institution. It's also hard to argue within the organization that it's worth taking such an endeavor. So learn from the other communities, learn from these formal setups on how to build a business case and where are the common interests, where are the cost savings, because this trust foundation that is built in the communities, especially on the enterprise level, can leverage a lot of cost savings, can leverage a lot of time that should not be wasted when you are in a crisis and you need the information fast, or you need some hands-on to help you. And very important, don't wait for others to initiate it or to drive it. Take the initiative, be the first. And since trust and mistrust shapes human interactions so much, I would really like you to check out this game from Nicky Kane. They are very good at developing funny games that explain concepts that are maybe difficult to understand, and they build algorithms around it which can give you different scenarios so that you can see different characters and also what could reflect real life. So I really want you to play this game after the speech if you have time. It usually takes around 30 minutes to go through the different scenarios, and it's based on the zero game theory. Thank you so much for listening in to the Rising Flame of Community today, and I hope more community engagement will come, both at the enterprise level as well as for you as individuals.